That's all right. We're still waiting for the blinking light, in case you're wondering why we're not starting yet. Once that blinking light becomes solid, we're good to go. Oh, look, here we are. We're ready to go. All right, well, we're going to start the Economic Development Committee meeting today, August 3rd, 5 o'clock. Do I have any courtesy of the floor? Thank you so much, Executive McClure.
On your, good afternoon, members of the committee and others. Your agenda today has the broadband roadmap, the beginning of the process of us coming to the conclusion of what we hope to be our way forward with respect to broadband, because we know part of our strategy in these next couple of years to make the middle class more solid and bring more people into the middle class, which is one of our primary goals, is going to be to make sure that broadband is something everyone has access to. And we're very pleased, and I have had an opportunity to review this preliminary report, and we're very pleased with some of the findings in it, because you're going to see that our citizens too have identified a problem and that they believe we have a role in taking action. And one of the things I want you to pay attention to in the report is that we have a lot of so-called coverage in the county with respect to broadband access. Very few places that don't have some form of broadband, but it's really the type of access that they have. Can they have the type of access that allows them to do schoolwork while mom and dad are also doing their remote work? Those kinds of things, the kinds of things that are going to lift people up into the middle class. So I'm very pleased about that. And also, I'm also pleased that we are St. Luke's RCAP partner with respect to the RCAP they're going to present to you this afternoon. One of the things that I think is often overlooked is that radiology is the healthcare field, and training future radiologists really is a public benefit. And I think that's one of the things they're going to talk to you about today. And additional operating rooms, 4 or 5 maybe, additional operating rooms, I'm not sure. Again, an obvious additional public benefit, even if these operating rooms aren't used for emergency trauma. Hip replacements and knee replacements change people's lives. And it's nice not to have to wait all day to go into your surgery. So we're very supportive of St. Luke's RCAP grant as well. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Okay, so now we'll have the presentation regarding broadband roadmap development plan. Thanks, Tina.
Good evening, everybody. So we are thrilled to be almost complete with our final broadband findings. So here to kind of give you an update on the status of what we've got the data for thus far. We have with us tonight Andrew Cohill, who is the president of Design 9, our consulting firm.
Thank you very much. I've got a lot of material. I'm going to try to roll through it quickly, and then we'll have some time for questions. Northampton County is an interesting place, but with respect to broadband, it's not necessarily unique. We're actually working with a county in Illinois and a county in Alabama that demographically and geographically is very similar. You've got some very dense towns and cities, as well as some very rural areas, and there's broadband problems in both areas. And so you're not alone in trying to grapple with and hopefully solve this problem.
I think you just press the down arrow.
Let's see. Let's see. I'm just trying to figure out how to page up.
Underneath the page number, towards the bottom, there's arrows.
This isn't my computer, I apologize.
There's no, where's the page?
Go down a little bit, and there's arrows.
Oh,
Yep.
there we go.
Yep.
Thank you.
Got it. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, you zoomed in a little bit. So go down to the negative, down all the way at the bottom of the page. It looks like a magnifying glass, but yeah, the negative. There you go. And just make it fit. Click that. Yep, there you go. That's,
There we go. Just very quickly, we were asked to look at the existing infrastructure in the county, particularly looking at the ISPs, their packages, their prices, where they offer service. We did do a residential business survey of a lot of information from that I'm going to talk about. We have been looking at regional opportunities. We did spend a lot of time evaluating providers, looking at current and future needs for both residents and businesses, putting together some strategies, putting together some costs, and looking at financing options. And I always like to throw this slide up very quickly. If you look at what people are spending on broadband today and you extrapolate that out over 30 years, there's about $9 billion that's going to be put in envelopes every single month. Not over 30 years, people are putting in envelopes a total of about $9 billion. And most of that money is leaving the county. A lot of it's leaving the state. So we often hear, well, there's no money for broadband. There's a lot of money being spent on broadband. The challenge is to just capture perhaps as little as 5 or 6% of that spend, and you could actually build fiber to every single home and business in the county. So, and there's also a lot of federal funds. We'll talk about that a bit more as we get further into it.
so just to clarify that slide, that's what consumers are paying for every month, like the monthly
Yes.
total over 30 years.
Businesses, local government, residents, it's an average estimate of what's going in. And we're not playing any tricks. That's actually not, we don't adjust for inflation or increasing prices.
Right.
It's 30 years based on today's costs. So just to start into the residential survey results, 63% of the respondents want better and more reliable service. 88% think the county has a role in facilitating better broadband. About 30% of respondents said they only have one option, DSL or cable or wireless. So they don't have any competitive choice. 26% are dissatisfied or very dissatisfied with their current speeds. This is probably going to represent mostly rural customers who are on slow DSL. 59% have 7 or more internet-connected devices at home, and 33% indicate availability of good broadband affects where they choose to live. So it's really broadband is both a community development and an economic development and even a land use issue. So here's some of the survey results. This is, and we've got, we'll probably have our full report completed next week. There'll be a lot more maps to look at. This is a look at what speeds people have. Look particularly at the yellow. There's certainly in the northwestern and northern areas of the county, you see a lot more yellow, which is really very slow DSL for the most part, or some wireless. But you also see a fair amount of yellow even in the bigger places like Easton and Bethlehem. Percentage of respondents who want better internet service by census tract. Not a lot of surprises here, but Again, the northwest corner of the county is where you're getting most people saying you've really got a problem, but there's also some census tracts in the south and to the far west that are also feel like they need help. So we took that data and combined several different questions and responses and tried to develop a broadband needs score. And this clarifies the areas of need. There's a band in the middle. It basically represents Easton and Bethlehem, where things are okay, needs not as great, which is not to say there is no need, but it's much more pronounced again in the northern and the southern part of the county. And if we start looking at that same kind of data by census tract, again, not a lot of surprises. The red is the areas of highest need, and orange comes next. So geographically, well over half the county feels like there's work to be done. We've got a lot of data from the survey on the internet service providers. I'm not going to try to go through this in any detail. As we deliver the report, you'll be able to review this at your leisure. If you look at the residents that said yes, they need better internet service, for every single provider, more than half felt like they weren't getting what they wanted. And again, if you look at, do you think county government has a role to play to facilitate better broadband? Everybody was answering, depending on their service provider, they all thought above 80% the county ought to have some help. I should mention here, we're not recommending the county become an internet service provider. We think that's a really bad idea. And I should have said that in the first slide. There's some other solutions that we'll talk about, but we don't think the solution is for the county government to go into the internet business. Business survey results, 57% of businesses want better access. 99% said the internet's going to be very important to the success of their business over the next 5 years. 24% responded that they're home-based. And so something I've been saying for a very long time is you have to think about residential neighborhoods and even rural roads as business districts of a sort. You have more, and the COVID crisis brought this out very sharply. In fact, it's really been fascinating to watch what's been happening since the end of the COVID crisis. It depends on who you read about or their opinions, but there's estimates, as an average, they're estimating about 30% of workers are going to be permanently working from home. And what that means is it's become more important than ever to have good, affordable business class services in residential areas. That wasn't something we talked about very much even 5 or 6 years ago. Most businesses also believe the county should help. Only about half of businesses are satisfied or very satisfied with their speed. And 70% of businesses need employees to be able to work from home, at least on a part-time basis. Wow. How satisfied, this is, again, there's a lot, we have a lot more maps in the final report. There were 69 businesses that responded. It was a mix of dissatisfied and satisfied, but most businesses are a little more satisfied with their service than residents. And again, nearly every business thought the county has a role to play. I'm not going to go, again, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but if you look at it by zip code, and that doesn't mean everybody in a zip code has this, but this is an estimate of what's available by zip code. In virtually all zip codes and some DSL, there's a limited amount of wireless, mostly in the Bethlehem area. There's some 5G cellular data service available in nearly every zip code. There's very little fiber in residential or business fiber in Northampton County. We were surprised at that. Typically now, when we look at this kind of analysis, even in another county that has demographics and geography similar to Northampton, we'll often see some zip codes might have 20 or 30% fiber to the home. And so there's been very little progress here. And so I think it puts the county a little bit at a business and economic development disadvantage.
Is there any particular reason why there's less fiber here?
Just the telephone and cable companies and the other ISPs are not making that investment. I do think this may change with the federal money, particularly we do see in other areas, some of the smaller internet service providers are going after the federal broadband funds, and that can be used to build out fiber to the home. In most places where we do see, say, 10, 15, 20% penetration, it's usually the incumbents, the telephone or the cable companies that are making those investments.
And on that list of providers, would that be like Verizon?
Yes.
Because I don't think a
Let me go back. Let's see.
There. So Penn Teledata, I think they have some fiber optic cable, right? And like T-Mobile and Verizon would, right?
Well, T-Mobile's a cellular carrier.
Cellular, yeah, but you said the phone companies. So are those?
So it would be, we'd be talking about Verizon, Penn Teledata. Penn Teledata has some business fiber in the county.
But not necessarily residential?
Not Penn Teledata, as far as I know, has no residential fiber to the home in the county.
Because, so Comcast down towards Philly and that area, they have a lot of fiber optic cable, but they haven't been able to come up to this area as far as I know.
So it depends, all of the cable companies have fiber in their backbone. And if you ask them if they have fiber, they'll often say, oh, yes, we have lots of fiber. But it goes to the curb or the pedestal, and then they're still running copper coaxial cable to most homes. And so if you're talking to the cable company, you have to ask them, are you providing fiber all the way to the home, or do you just have fiber to the curb? And a lot of the time they're going to say, well, we just have fiber to the curb. We're still using coaxial cable to the house.
And so they haven't built up that infrastructure then?
No. And that's pretty common in most of the country. It's very spotty. We do think the federal BEAD funding is just now starting to be released, and we believe a lot of that money, it's $40 billion, a lot of that money is going to go to the cable companies and the telephone companies. So they will use, we think two things are going to happen, particularly with the cable companies. They're going to expand their footprint and build farther out into some areas where they currently don't offer service. They will probably do that by building fiber to the home in those areas. it just depends on what decision they make. They do get extra points when they're applying for federal funds. They'll get extra points for doing fiber to the home. So I think the fiber to the home situation in Northampton County will begin to change in 2024 as those funds start supporting new construction.
So those funds are going to be delivered very soon, within the next year?
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Oh, I'm sorry. So those funds are going to be delivered within the next year? And how do we ensure that those funds are going to be used for fiber optic cable proliferation to the homes and not for something else?
So the federal money's being allocated at the state level. And in Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Broadband Authority, which was formed about 2 years ago, is going to be responsible for distributing those funds. I think, I know some of the people that are involved. I think they're going to do a really good job of vetting the proposals. But one of our recommendations is going to be that the county starts meeting regularly with all of your service providers and really trying to get some very specific information about what they're doing. And you can also go to the Pennsylvania Broadband Authority and make sure that any proposals they're getting from service providers in the county are getting you the right kind of infrastructure.
Okay.
And I think, actually, I'll just take a minute to talk a little bit more about the Broadband Authority. Probably our biggest recommendation is going to be to stay in close touch with the Broadband Authority. Pennsylvania, having formed that statewide authority and dispersing it that way, I think they're going to do a much better job than a lot of other states. We're seeing some other states, the money's just being channeled through the Department of Commerce or Housing and Community Development. The fact that they formed a broadband authority that is focused entirely on broadband and doesn't have 6 or 7 other responsibilities to deal with, I think is going to lead to better outcomes.
So do you think that the county should have their own individual broadband authority? Tina says no.
I don't think so, no.
No, but should that be a subgroup of some other committee?
Well, I think certainly the broadband committee is perhaps the you continue to meet, and you're the group that talks to the service providers and tries to hold their feet to the fire.
Okay.
Question on that, though, because in the cities, I looked at your zip. In Easton, the city of Easton is 18042. There's 0 fiber. But if you add 40 and 45, which is Palmer and Forks, that's where the fiber is. So it's going to be up to us to talk to the municipalities? Is that what you're suggesting? Because they're the ones who, I know in Easton, they make the contracts of who could come in Easton, who can't.
Well, they can't stop somebody from coming into Easton. That was done away with a long time ago. The municipalities, they can still charge franchise fees, and sometimes the franchise fees are onerous enough that it's a discouragement to competitive providers or smaller ISPs. So our recommendation always is to have very reasonable, if a company comes in and wants to do underground utilities in public right-of-way, a franchise agreement is appropriate and necessary, but it's often becomes a form of taxation because Blacksburg, Virginia, where I live, used to have a fairly onerous franchise fee, and it just showed up on my Comcast cable bill. They just passed the whole fee through to homeowners. Blacksburg, as an example, did away with that. They wanted more competition in town, and they did away with the high franchise fee many years ago. And now it's a flat $500 a year for anybody that wants to use public right-of-way to put in fiber cable. And so in Blacksburg, there's actually two smaller competitive fiber to the home providers that are competing directly with Comcast. And it's interesting, when one of these providers goes into a neighborhood, and nearly all of Blacksburg has Comcast cable, and it's not a bad service, but when one of these competitive fiber providers goes into a residential neighborhood and offers fiber, 50% of the homeowners leave Comcast and go to the new provider. It's cheaper and it's better. In fact, most homeowners save between $50 and $75 a month compared to what they're paying for Comcast in Blacksburg. And that's actually pretty common now. Once you get a smaller competitive fiber provider competing against the cable company, you'll see many customers will leave, and being able to save money is a big incentive. I'm going to skip over a couple of these. I was just talking about price, but if you look at what people are paying nationwide, if you have fiber to the home, you're probably paying about $85 or $90 a month. If you add in streaming services and a phone line, you might be paying $155 on the high side. And if you have a cable package with internet and a TV, for $200. So there's a big savings once you get fiber. And that's particularly advantageous for low and moderate income households who can save a lot of money. We see in some communities, we're seeing fiber to the home prices as low as $50 or $55. And you can buy, Hulu and Netflix and maybe even Disney for another $20, and you're spending at a minimum about half of what you'd spend on a cable TV internet package. It's a little more analysis on what is just a summary of what the providers in the county are paying. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but this will all be in the final report. I've been talking about funding opportunities. Areas with less than 100 by 20 speeds are eligible for grants. Most cable internet providers already meet that requirement. So we think what will happen, as I mentioned earlier, we think the cable companies that go after funding are going to use that to build out into new areas and hopefully go straight to fiber to the home rather than just expanding their hybrid fiber coax network. What we're not seeing is the cable and telephone companies get grants to build infrastructure, but they're not lowering prices.
No kidding. Really?
I know it's a big surprise,
It
but
is a shocker.
oh, it's a shocker.
Yeah. So this $1.1 billion, that's being, what's the criteria by which it's spread across the state in terms of equity? Is there a priority for rural areas or a priority for inner city where broadband doesn't necessarily have the connectivity? Or is it by proposal? Or does every county get, it's the same amount?
It's a little bit of all of those things. But the federal guidelines,
You have to go to microphone.
Yeah, you have to go to the microphone because now we can't hear you.
the federal guidelines look at unserved, underserved, and served areas.
Okay.
And served areas are defined as anything that's already got 100 by 20, 100 down, 20 up. Underserved is between 25 and 100, and unserved is less than 25.3. So if you're less than 25.3, that's going to cover almost any area that's basically only has DSL. So that's going to be mostly rural areas. With respect to how the money's distributed at the state level, they have to follow the federal guidelines first, but then there's certainly going to be some distribution equity, so that every county and city in the state does get some money if they apply or have an ISP partner to apply. And so there is some indirect weighting for rural areas based on the unserved and underserved areas, and then above or below that, I'm not sure where you put the political considerations, but that always plays a little bit in there as well.
Right, so if you wanted to talk to the senator and give him a nudge and say, can you do something for us, would that be a strategy to talk to our state elected officials to lobby for funds? Or is it really just the Astounds and the Penn Teledata and the Service Electric that need to make sure that their proposals are in and
So I think there's,
well-written?
because Pennsylvania's formed this broadband authority, I think, and it's somewhat independent of politics. I think it's going to be, and it's just my opinion, but I think it's going to be fairer than you're going to see in some other states. But I think the first two things the county should do is begin having very serious conversations with all of your service providers and ask them what their intentions are. Are they going to apply for funds? If they're applying for funds, where are they going to spend those funds? And what are they going to spend the funds on? And then the second is to meet with the folks from the Broadband Authority and maybe make a trip to Harrisburg and sit down with them and find out, how are they evaluating proposals, and can you provide them with some input and insight onto what Northampton County needs? And at that point, you may have some influence if you've already talked to service providers about, here's the providers we think have good proposals, and the providers need endorsements and letters of support from the county. So you do have some influence on these proposals.
Oh, right. So if let's say we went to meet with the Broadband Authority, they might have an example of the best proposal written. And so we could take that to like Astound or Penn Teledata or whatever it is and say, this is something that got ranked high, that this got a priority. So you might want to include some of these things. And then we could invite RCN or Astound or whatever they're called to a meeting like this where they could advance their proposals and then we could endorse whichever ones we want to.
Sure,
or all of them.
as an example, because you've got all this survey data now and actually can point to the fact that you've done a survey, we've identified several areas of the county that need special attention. These are the areas we hope get appropriate funding. So you've got data you can take to the Broadband Authority and to the service providers. I would encourage you to share all this with the service providers and just tell them, we've done some work here to identify the areas of need. We expect you and we will support a proposal that goes after some of these areas of need rather than there's a residential neighborhood in Palmer Township
Yeah.
where we'd like to put fiber and do that rather than going out to the north end of the county.
Right. Okay, thanks. Good strategy.
Now, my question to that is, the money is being allocated to the state, is it then being allocated to the county?
No, the service providers and local governments can form a, public-private partnership to apply together. And so the Broadband Authority will disperse the funds based on the proposals they receive. So it's not going from the Broadband Authority to the county and then to a service provider. But if the service providers don't have support from local government, I don't think they're going to score very highly in their applications.
Because I know we were at CCAP in March, we went to several broadband, and we sat in on some of the things, and we weren't told this, but now that we've done the survey, it gives us a little more backbone on what we can do when we have to meet with them again, because we did not hear about this when we were together. Am I right, Tom?
I don't think they had this. But that's why the county, that's the county's role in this, is to support certain proposals and to offer that feedback so that those get accepted, right?
That's right.
Yeah, okay, so we're not even a pass-through for the money.
No.
Whether it doesn't come through us at all, it's state funds that go directly to them, but they're going to score higher.
Right, and so you want to make sure to the best of your ability that those funds are spent in the areas of the county where the need is highest.
Right, and because we have data, we know where those areas are.
Right.
Makes perfect sense, okay. Moving on, sorry.
No, this is all good questions.
clarification.
In terms of digital equity, there's a number of things the county can do. Nationwide, there's been, what we're seeing is there's a lot of low and moderate income families that are not aware that there is a $30 subsidy from the Affordable Connectivity Program. And Tina, you said one of the cable companies is already. Astound. So Astound is actually doing some promotion and marketing there, but the county may have a role to help put it in water bills, just a flyer that if you meet certain needs criteria, you can get a subsidy. The other thing you can do is when you're meeting with ISPs, we see some internet providers who will actually provide a slightly slower broadband internet package for low and moderate income families, so they charge less. They might have a retail price of, say, $40, and then if that family applies and qualifies for the ACP $30 subsidy, their total monthly cost is $10 or $12. So promoting the ACP program can really have a significant impact on some families. The current ACP program is scheduled to expire in 2024, but everything I've heard suggests it'll probably be extended for at least another year. Let's see. So we actually, we kind of got to some of the stuff that's on this slide, just working with ISPs. One of the things the feds have done, because there were some in ARPA funds were not spent very well, There wasn't a lot of oversight in how broadband funds were spent with ARPA. They've really tightened it up, and they've probably gone too far the other way. You have to identify your contractors and subcontractors as part of the proposal. A Comcast or a smaller independent service provider would have a lot more trouble doing that because it means basically a contractor has to commit to doing some work when they don't know if they're going to get paid to do it. So that's a challenge.
That will be a challenge.
The bigger problem for smaller providers is you have to have a 25% match from the ISP, and they have to have a letter of credit for the 25%. So even if they have, if they wanted to apply for, say, $2 million fiber to the home, they'd have to commit a 25% match, and they'd have to have an irrevocable letter of credit guaranteeing that $500,000. Most smaller competitive providers are not going to be able to do that.
Well, isn't that going to drive some of the smaller ones out of business because they won't be able to compete because now they're not going to have broadband?
I don't think it's going to drive them out of business, but it certainly makes
Less
their
competitive.
ability to compete and to grow and to compete more effectively against incumbents much more difficult. I don't rule out that this is going to be changed. There's been a tremendous amount of pushback against this requirement, and the feds at any time could issue a change to the rules, and that wouldn't surprise me if that comes sometime in early fall. But right now, those are the rules. And I'm going to stop there. That's just a quick summary. I'm happy to take questions, as I know you've got some other work to do tonight, but I'm here as long as you have questions for me.
I definitely appreciate your presentation. I know that this is an important issue in the county, especially to Upper Mount Bethel Township and our Slate Belt area, right? Are there any other questions that anybody has? Ms. Hefner?
I might have missed it in the beginning, but how did you conduct the survey and how large was the sample?
I'm sorry, I'm having a little
I'm
trouble.
sorry, how many people were in the survey and how did you conduct?
Oh, we mailed we had an online residential and business survey that could be filled out really in just a few minutes online. But we also mailed a paper copy of the residential survey to every single household in Northampton County. And people had the option of filling out the paper survey and mailing it back, or we had the URL and the QR code for the online survey. Most people, when they got the paper survey, if they wanted to fill it out, went and did it online. But we did get, I don't remember what the count was for my staff, but we got several hundred paper surveys back as well.
I'm sorry, could you say that again? We got how much?
Several hundred.
Several hundred paper surveys. We got several thousand responses.
But you don't
total.
know the exact number.
I'm
You
sorry?
don't know the exact number of
I don't have it off the
sample.
top of my head. It was in the survey report, and it'll be in the final report.
Okay, so we'll find that number out for the final report. But there were 69 businesses, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Gafredo?
Yeah, I got one.
Sure.
Is there a deadline to be applying for money for some of these, I don't know if they're grants or to the Broadband Authority? Do you know of any deadlines coming up very soon?
It depends on the grant program. The BEAD funding is is probably going to be, because it's being basically administered by the state and the Broadband Authority, it's probably just going to be ongoing. I believe they're going to distribute.
An August 8th deadline for like a big chunk of this, like $20 billion.
Yeah, some,
August 9th for what?
For the capital fund to apply, there is a deadline.
I know.
He's got to come up and talk to you.
Well, if we let him up, I think he's going to take like his time. So
I
where
know
did
that,
you get this number, August 9th?
from an Upper Mount Bethel, they had a broadband meeting that they asked us to come to, and they were giving us all these dates and numbers. And
And they said August 9th for what?
for the capital fund, there's like 4 portions of it, and the capital fund was a pretty heavy portion of it. I would say like 20 to 25%. And it was one of the largest ones that you could pull from. I feel like we're kind of behind the 8 ball already. And I don't know, you can't, yeah, you can't address.
Excuse me, sir, we are not the Committee for Broadband. We are the Economic Development Committee. Thank you. This gentleman here has come today to make this presentation of the survey that we're seeing for the first time. I welcome you to give us more information on the
don't
Upper
have-
Mount Bethel
I don't
Township
have that
meeting, if
much
you have any more.
information. I just have an information that I was sitting there and they were presenting all these dates, August 9th being one of them. And we really,
My email address is tzerinsky@norcopa.com.
gov.
There we go. We're going to have the information for the next meeting then, and this gentleman, you might even want to present it. And when you're invited to the meeting and you're on the agenda, you can. Thank you so much. Any other questions? Mr. Cusick?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. First of all, I wanted to point out that if you live in a rural area, you might not get a water or sewer bill, so sending it out with that would not.
you might get a tax bill, though.
Everybody gets
you
a
get
tax bill.
Access to broadband today is what access to electricity was maybe 100 years ago. But the difference is, something like electricity or water or sewer, typically you have one provider, and you get a bill and it's regulated by the PUC. When it comes to broadband, there's so many choices, and I think one of the difficulties is, well, you know, who should be my cell phone provider? Who should be my broadband provider? And once you start, and I think you did some of it, once you start adding up, well, you can cut the cord, but then you're going to need a streaming service or you know, Hulu, Netflix, whatever. So I guess the question is, how can we help people to get their bills down? Because, you know, initially they told us that, well, you know, once this comes in, this will reduce your cost. But I don't see that. I see that as TV becomes less linear and you have more choices, well, if you want HBO Max and Netflix and Disney and Peacock, that starts to add up. So the question is, what can we do? $30 is nice, but some of these start getting expensive. I guess my question is, how can we help people save money and get the most out of this, which is a necessary service that we're going to provide?
Wow, there's about 3 really important issues you brought up, and each one's a little different. Probably the most important one you've outlined is the issue of infrastructure and who should own it, and should there be more than one telecom infrastructure provider. I've been concerned for a long time, particularly for rural areas, but also for low and moderate income neighborhoods where we're just not seeing the investment. If you look, and I'm painting with a very broad brush, but if you look nationally at where fiber to the home investment is taking place, it's primarily in middle class and upper middle class suburban neighborhoods. It's not taking place in the inner city. It's not taking place in older distressed neighborhoods, and it's not taking place in rural communities. And so I started arguing about 15 years ago that there is actually, we talk about the digital divide, and it's real, but if you could form a coalition of rural and low and moderate income neighborhoods, you'd have a very powerful voice for how some of these spending decisions are being made. But we treat those two as, they don't come together very often to talk about common problems. But you show me an older, lower middle class neighborhood and a rural community to talk about broadband, the problem is exactly the same. The investment's not there, and I've been an advocate for a long time for some community ownership of infrastructure. I don't think local government ought to be internet service providers. It's a very difficult business. It's still changing. So that takes me to your next thing about streaming. Probably half of the streaming services today aren't going to be here in 3 years. They're all losing hundreds of millions of dollars. They're lying about the number of customers they have and what they're actually watching. And it's going to be very interesting to see how that develops. But if nothing else, there'll be fewer choices to worry about, or fewer services to subscribe through in the first place. So maybe that'll save a little money. But it's an interesting problem from the content side of broadband. So there's this issue of ownership. We do see there's a few communities that and local governments that have made the decision to make investments in infrastructure. We're working with the city of Arcadia in California right now, where they have almost universal fiber to the home in their residential neighborhoods. Upper middle class community. They have virtually no fiber in their downtown area, and their businesses are screaming.
No.
So the internet service providers. So they're not offering a service. They're simply providing infrastructure. One of the analogies I use is you think about roads. Communities build roads and they maintain roads, but they don't own the businesses that use those roads to deliver goods and services. And so you can actually think about broadband infrastructure the same way. You can hang fiber on utility poles, or you can put it underground in conduit, and you simply allow internet service providers to lease that affordably, and that cuts their costs, and you get back to that single owner. It's most efficient to have one single very high performance network in a community or in a county, but you can have multiple providers competing for business over that. And we've worked with a number of communities that have made that decision.
Yeah.
It's not for.
There's no simple answer. And
No,
I think
it's not.
It's very you have the piping, but then what comes through the pipe is an additional cost. And if you want more than one stream coming through, that keeps adding and adding to your bill. And the one thing that bothers me is like Phillies games, now some of them are shipped over to Apple TV. So
They're just shipped there.
I'm not, and I don't want to have to buy another streaming service just to watch, an odd Phillies game here. So,
But isn't that what they want you to do? They want to gatekeep. That's the whole point of making money in this system that we have. It's not equitable and it's not kind, but it's profitable to some people. So if you have one system that is your high performance network, who's going to regulate them? Because you don't have a PUC like they do regulating public utilities. So even when you do get one network, there's nothing that says that they can't jack the prices up once they get a monopoly.
Well, if you have a single network and you have at least two providers on it, they're going to compete with each other. And it's an open marketplace that manages that issue of cost. What's happened in '84, we broke up AT&T, and then in '96 we had another ruling that basically opened up the whole telecom market to what was in theory was going to create a lot more competition. So in about 40 years, we've gone from a single company providing all of the telecom in the United States to now hundreds of companies. But the '96 decision didn't turn out the way we hoped. And what I call it is we're seeing the balkanization of telecom. And by that, I mean we have many little islands of monopoly service providers. So we used to have one monopoly service provider. Now we have islands of providers, and most of them have no competition on their island. And so things haven't really changed that much from the 70s and the 80s. And we're still seeing where there is no competition, we're seeing that, the cable companies and the telephone companies where they do offer internet, it's every year your price of service goes up $4 or $5.
Sure does. Fascinating. Okay, you have the last comment, and then we have to close this out because we have two other things on our agenda, and this is very important, but we have other two
Running out
things.
of time.
Sure are.
So we keep talking about fiber. Where's the 5G wireless come into play? How does that, are we not talking about that at all?
So I think wireless in the rural parts of the county is going to play a very important role.
Oh, yeah?
The cell phone companies really only look at two things when they're trying to decide to put a tower up. How many cars are going to drive by the tower during the day, and what's the density of households and businesses in about a 2-mile radius? And if you can't meet their threshold for those two numbers, they're simply not going to put a tower up. So what some local governments do is actually subsidize the cost of those towers. Again, they're not a service provider. They put up the tower, they'll pay for some basic maintenance, and then they lease space. And some communities have just given the space to wireless providers or even cellular providers to do that. But I think in some portions of the county, wireless is going to continue to be very important for a while.
Very good.
The last thing I'll say, and I don't have a pen with me. Can you hold, do you have a
I
pen?
have a pen.
So hold that up.
Got it.
I always hear, oh, there's no way rural communities and rural residents are ever going to get fiber. Well, the fiber cable they need is the diameter of that pen. And every home in Northampton County, no matter where they are, already has electric service. So we're talking about one more cable, the diameter of that pen. And so it's, as I said, it's not really a cost thing. It's a political issue and an ordinance issue. You can, yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
Got it.
There's no reason why, and I said, you got to think about that $9 billion leaving the county. You could do a 1 or 2% special increment on property taxes and run fiber to every single home and business in Northampton County. I've been proposing that for 25 years. Everybody runs away from me when I suggest raising taxes.
Well, you could do a one-time kind of.
If you can collect a special assessment of a few dollars a month from every household for 20 years, you can build the world's best network to every home in Northampton County. I call it, the other thing I call it is the pizza pie model. $10 a month from every household, price of a large pizza, will build you the world's best network.
You heard it here, folks. Okay, hey, thank you so much,
Thank you.
Andrew, and we'll look forward to actually getting the report. And moving on, the discussion regarding approving the fiscal year 2023 annual action plan for the county of Northampton.
Just a quick note before we move on to Mr. Brooks. I do want to let council know as a reminder that back in April of '22, we did have someone join us from the FCC to do a whole presentation on the Affordable Connectivity Program. So all of our municipality is aware of this. Further, we sent this information out to all of the school districts within the county and asked them to share it accordingly, because the children that benefit from the free school lunch program will also qualify for this. So I just wanted to remind you of that.
Do
So
we send a reminder out? Because the school's coming up fast.
we can certainly send a reminder out for as long as the program exists,
That
but
would
we
probably
did
be-
bring it to everybody's attention prior. So without further ado, Mr. Brooks.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members. The resolution before you will approve the 2023 Annual Action Plan for submission to HUD. In order to receive this funding from HUD, the county started this process way back in February. We solicited project ideas and plans from citizens, local organizations, and our municipalities in order to address their needs. These funds are to be used by municipalities and nonprofit organizations towards local community development activities such as affordable housing, capital improvement, and service agency needs. So for this year's CDBG application round, Northampton County received 24 applications and is proposing to fund 24 projects using $1,145,924 of CDBG funds. The county has home funding of $726,227 to be used towards affordable housing activities. And we have homeless prevention ESG funds of $190,766 for 5 homeless prevention activities. I'd just like to describe some of the proposed activities to be considered for funding. We have several requests for accessibility improvements in a senior citizen center that needs an accessible restroom, a children's play area that needs some accessibility improvements, and accessibility improvements are needed in a municipal community park. We have an activity in one municipality that will undertake energy-efficient street lighting as a way to reduce cost. Capital improvement needs in this year's request include water and sanitary sewer improvements. We have 4 municipalities have requested funding to complete street paving projects and stormwater management activities. 2 of our municipalities have projects to repair storm-damaged catch basins. We have an activity to assist one municipality in planning for their future. Our residents with low to moderate income will benefit from all the activities from the public service providers. The proposed activities by passing this resolution will meet the HUD requirement that 70% of the funds go towards residents with low to moderate income. As this year process nears completions, I want to talk real quickly about the funding round in 2024, which will mark 2 milestones. In 1996, Northampton County was able to qualify as a direct HUD entitlement. So during 2024 will be the county's 28th year of providing this funding. And HUD CDBG program will have a 50th anniversary during 2024. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Are there any questions? Ms. Hefner?
Do you have the list of the proposals, or have they not been decided? Are you saying
24
that you have?
There's an annual action plan we have on the website and has been in all the libraries, and we dispense it all throughout the communities for the last 30 days. But we certainly can get that to you.
No, I don't think
You're
that's
talking
the
about the
question.
24 applications.
Yes. I was asking the applicants and the projects. Do you have that list available?
I didn't bring it with me, but it's on the website, and it's part of that annual action plan. We're funding actually the categories towards.
Mr. Cusick?
Yeah, I had a question regarding the homeless emergency assistance and rapid transition to housing. We're seeing these pictures out of New York where they have migrants sleeping on the streets and living in hotels. We're a short bus ride away. And I guess my question is, are those funds available for that?
We use the funds towards our homeless service providers, and there's 5 categories of funding, and we only have 190,000 for that, so it's really not a very large amount of money. Some of the other county organizations are more adept at addressing that homeless than actually our program. We fund a lot of the administration costs, perhaps an upgrade in some of the homeless shelters, and maybe some of the other activities with our funding.
So I guess my question is if couple buses come in from New York every day. I mean, if several of them showed up with.
Broad stroke,
Is this the kind of program that would be used? I'm just curious.
with our funding, no.
No?
No, it wouldn't be. It would be directly for the service providers for their agency's costs, for their staffing, but our small amount of money.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Brooks. I appreciate your presentation today. And we have one more presentation. We have a meeting till 6:30, at 6:30. So we want to make sure that we have St. Luke's be able to present their, the resolution.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
So we'll introduce Melissa Schaefer is here from St. Luke's, who is the Associate Vice President of Government and Community Relations for their program.
Yeah.
You just do that.
Oh, okay. Just do the arrows to proceed, yep. Okay, okay, great. Hi, as Tina said, I'm Melissa Schaefer. I work for St. Luke's. I handle government relations. I also work with our community health department. And I brought with me, in case you have specific construction questions, Paul Yantosh from our construction department. So he's my backup. As you're all aware, the RCAP program is a great program that we have in the state of Pennsylvania for economic development projects. St. Luke's has utilized this program in the past for the Anderson campus, which is located in Bethlehem Township in Northampton County. And this time, we have applied and received tentative funding in the amount of $4.3 million for a project for the continued expansion of the Anderson campus. I'm sure you guys have been watching as that campus has grown from 1 building to 2 to 3. There's a cancer center now. We have a mothers and babies center there. We have an ambulatory surgical center. It's really a great campus. And so this is just a little highlight of the campus now. Some statistics. Our emergency department sees over 50,000 patients every year. We recently had to relocate the emergency department because it had just outgrown, the usage of the emergency department, we just didn't have enough space. So we relocated the emergency department and expanded it. And that allowed us to have space for this next phase of the project. Which is going to allow us to add some operating rooms and space for our radiology residency program. I didn't know this before I started working at St. Luke's 5 years ago, but it's St. Luke's University Health Network for a reason. We have a robust graduate medical education program. And so with the last expansion that happened at the Anderson campus, we actually have a graduate medical education center in that facility. I hate to say it's in the basement, but let's say it's in the first floor. And it's a place where our residents can come, they can study, there's a cafeteria. It feels very like student center-esque from your college days. And so we have this new residency program for radiologists. Radiologists are in high demand. Every procedure that you can think of that happens at a hospital needs to have imaging. And imaging is necessary for predicting and preventing illnesses. Think of things like your mammograms or your colonoscopies and things like that. But then also you come in and you my son has hit his head twice and has needed a CAT scan. Boys. And so that's imaging. And so having these operating rooms is going to allow our radiology residents to have the opportunities in this expanded environment to have hands-on training. One of our operating rooms at Anderson is actually a robotic operating room. And if anyone is interested, we would love to have you guys over. I can have Ed Naraki, our president, give you a tour of what we have there, what our expansion plans are. It's really an exciting space. So the blue shaded area is the area that's in the scope of the RCAP grant. I think the slide before said it's 38,000 square feet. And it's the schedule that we're looking at right now. We're still putting together final designs and bid specs. So by the time we have everything bid out and start construction, we're looking at mid-2024, right? Yeah, summer 2024 for construction on this. There's other construction projects that are phased, so you'll see things going on now, finishing up the emergency department, but this project itself is 2024. So that's really the scope of the project. I'm happy to answer any questions, and really the involvement, and you guys have done RCAP grants before to be a local project sponsor. St. Luke's is a private nonprofit organization. We can't accept RCAP grants directly, so we work with local project sponsors. I have to say, so I have done many of these RCAP grants in counties and municipalities, and Tina Smith, I would really like her to just run my life. But she is so organized and she keeps me on task. And we have a couple other, we have another grant that we're doing with Star Community Health, and she just keeps us all on task. So I'm really looking forward to working with her. And the great thing is about working with St. Luke's is we actually have a development department. And so we have folks that do all of our grant administration. So the legwork on behalf of the county is really going to be at the end, just pushing a button and passing along payment. So we will be handling all of the submittals, making sure that all the payroll is processed. Everything will be handled on our end. And then, of course, the county gets an administrative fee. And if you look in the resolution, we'll do a subgrantee agreement, and the county will be held harmless. Really, it's a procedural relationship between St. Luke's and the state and Northampton County.
So basically, we're the pass-through.
You're the pass-through.
Yes.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of people see St. Luke's expanding everywhere, and they're like, why would the county give them a grant?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we're clear that we are the pass-through through this money. We're not giving you a grant. We see the work that you do, and obviously, I am partial. My mom was just at St. Luke's, and you took very good care of her.
Oh, good. I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah. And so.
I'm partial too.
Yeah. The facility is definitely state-of-the-art, and I can see that everything there does definitely look like some sort of university hospital. When you go in there, everything is very high grade, and the care was exceptional. So I'm glad that you're able to maintain that level of care for the people in our community.
And I really appreciate that. And just to add a comment on that, you raise a great point. Why would anyone give St. Luke's a grant?
Yeah.
You see us expanding everywhere. But really, we do a lot of capital improvements because of the growing population. And, if you're interested, I can certainly give you a data dump on, the aging population in the county and the state. There's just more of a need for services. And so, we really appreciate every dollar we get to help us grow and expand and recruit and retain providers so we can keep providing care.
Right. I think it's when people see that you give money to I don't know, I see your name on Liberty's field, their
Yeah.
football field.
Yeah.
So I imagine you contributed money to them.
Yeah, we have great relationships all over. And so there is, we're a part of the community just like any other business.
Right. So I guess the justification is when people see that you give money, they ask, why do you need money?
Right.
You know, but for a capital project, I just want you to give the opportunity, because we know that the paper's here, and probably the paper has been asking this question too, like, why would any government entity be giving
Yeah,
St.
well,
Luke's money?
St. Luke's has the opportunity to support youth athletics and any kind of community health, really. I mean, we run medical vans and dental vans, and it's important for us to, make sure that our community is healthy. And so an active population is a healthier population. We really want to keep people out of the hospital. We want people to take advantage of preventative medicine. And so relationships with the school district, for the kids to, be as healthy as they can, that's important to us.
Go ahead. What? Go ahead. Yeah, you go. Mr.
I know
Lot.
we're running out of time, so I'll keep this real quick.
Great.
The grant is going for construction costs, or is it going to be used for soft costs, or is it?
Yep, so the redevelopment assistant capital projects or capital programs, RCAP program has very specific guidelines about how we can use this money. So it's construction costs, and it will be all reviewed by the state and their consultant, the Office of Budget, and the Department of Labor and Industry.
And that being said, the question, why do we give a grant to St. Luke's? I would hope that you realize you're getting taxpayers' money from the local community and from our state to do this. And so this is going for, some end users got creative with RCAP grants and tried to throw the money in soft costs and stuff. So I'm happy you're saying this is going to be used for construction costs, because it is an economic development driver.
Right.
That's what RCAP was built for. And to use it in the actual cost of construction, it'll do a lot more economic development in the area than paying for permitting and
Yeah.
architectural work. And that being said, being it's taxpayers' money, I would hope you'd make a real effort to try to hire local contractors as much as possible, so we can keep the money into the valley and give back. And one other thing, I would hope that you as an organization also look at the contractors you hire and make sure they're supplying decent benefits for the people, being that you guys live off of benefits, health benefits by employers paying it. I would think that should be important for your organization to make sure that you're hiring people that have a livable wage and have decent benefits. So that, it's just my spiel. I appreciate that. We're running out of time.
No,
Thank you.
absolutely. And just so you know, the requirement is that all the work is bid prevailing wage rate.
Right.
So it's a great wage for all those workers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And keep up the
Madam
good
Chair.
work.
And you make bids on that, multiple bids?
Yes, yeah,
So
yeah,
your
it's required.
Your RFP has multiple bidders?
Yeah, yeah, it's
Just checking.
required, yeah.
Just checking. Okay, thanks.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Myers, thank you.
we did all this joking.
Hi.
Where exactly are you adding at?
I'm going to let Paul answer that. Paul?
Is it where the emergency room was before? Are you adding to there?
Yes, that's correct.
So that's where you're going to back over, and that's what this is going to be developed into?
Correct. The
I was
original,
trying to look on the map where it is. I'm very familiar with the campus. That's why I wanted to figure out where exactly you're going.
yeah, that blue shaded area
Was the emergency
was the
room.
original emergency room.
So this is where you're going to do your work?
Correct.
That answers my question. That's why I needed to know where we're at, because you were doing all that. I need to know where we're going. Okay, thanks.
They're going to give us a tour anyway, right?
Oh, we'd love to.
We got to wrap it up then. Okay, thank you.
We're doing great. Okay, any other questions for the good of the order? If not, I'm going to thank Melissa, and again, your name was Paul. Okay, I want to thank Melissa and Paul for the presentation. It was very thorough. You might want to stick around because we're voting on this tonight, so you're welcome too. And because there's nothing else, we're going to adjourn this meeting and take a break.
Excuse me, Madam Chairman. Can a Northampton citizen ask a couple of questions, or?
You may stay and ask whatever you want at public comment for the actual council meeting. So every meeting, we have a courtesy of the floor at the beginning where we allow public comment, and then we run the meeting. If you were on my agenda, I would have acknowledged you, you would have stepped to the microphone, and you would have been able to speak. So the next one is our actual county council meeting. That's at 6:30. So if you stick around for 10 minutes, you can make your comments. And I'm going, sign up on that sheet there, and I'm going to go get you one of my cards so I can get all your information, okay? Yep, thank you so much. We're adjourned.